Looking back on the week that was and forward to the week ahead. It's the Fantasy Football Hustle. Waiver wire, trades, roster management. To win in fantasy football, you must remember one simple rule. Never get out hustled. It's the Fantasy Football Hustle. Here are your hosts, Brian Drake and Dwain McFarland.
Tuesday night. The beers are cracked. The kids are in bed. And we got a new name for this show. No longer is this the Tuesday Night Hustle. You can listen to us Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It doesn't matter what day, my friends. It is the Fantasy Football Hustle. That's right. We're still brought to you by FightingChanceFantasy.com, and we are proud members of the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network. You can find them over at FullTimeFantasy.com. But myself, Brian Drake, and the analytical assassin, Dwain McFarland, have done a little rebranding. We are now the Fantasy Football Hustle. We encompass all things fantasy football, from draft strategy to coaching scheme breakdowns to who you should pick to waiver wires to trades, in-season management. We've got it all covered for you, and we've got a very, very special show for you tonight, a little different than what we usually do, and we're going to call it Ask Dwain Anything. We went on Twitter, and using our new handle at FF Hustle and hashtag FF Hustle. Check that out, and you can always talk to us that way. We asked you out there in fantasy land. O.J. Simpson's doing fantasy work. Why can't we? You know, right? So what questions do you have for Dwain? And I'm going to read back some of the responses that we got tonight. Dwain, are you excited about what our fans could be asking of you? You have no idea any of these questions.
I am tentatively excited. Let's see how it goes.
First of all, let me get your quick, this is not one of the questions, but what do you think of this O.J. Simpson on Twitter nonsense?
I'm not paying any attention to it. I mean, you can't help but see some of the stuff, that's going around. But to me, it's just, something I don't need in my brain. This just I would be wasting RPMs on.
You know that some stupid betting or fantasy site is paying him too, because if he's talking fantasy football, someone's paying him. So it's disgusting. I hope that site, whoever pays him, is going out of business tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, whether we like it or not, he's a very well-known individual, and so it's going to be easy, for him to get followers, and, from there, like you said, endorsements and things like that are going to follow. So that's just the way the game works.
Follow us. Screw OJ. Follow me at Drake Fantasy on Twitter. Follow Dwain if you really want some good information at Dwain McFarland. Spell his first name Dwain, and then McFarland, his last name. You can follow the show at FF Hustle. And that's how you get in touch with us. And I'm excited tonight because usually Dwain, sits at his computer and he goes over just hours and hours of information and data, and he's got everything laid out in front of him. And I think this is going to make him a little uncomfortable because he doesn't know what we're going to ask him. So, Dwain, if you're ready here, I'm going to fire away with question one. Are you ready to rock and roll?
I'm ready.
All right. Question number one. This is from Jeremy. He says, the Steelers were 31st in rush attempts last year. Based on that and the news of James Conner possibly splitting carries, do you think he's still a first-round pick?
Yeah, I do. At the minimum, I think he's a late-round first pick, round pick 10, 11, 12, and then coming back around the turn. I love him there. Quickly, what I'll say is, number one, the Steelers' history with Mike Tomlin, they've fed a main guy. So I feel good about that. Secondly, if you go back and look at James Conner last year, you think I'm not prepared, Drake? I'm ready for anything, dude. I'm ready for anything. So funny, I actually was looking at this like a day ago, and I happen to have it still freshly baked in my mind because I'm hearing this whole thing of, hey, based on late last season, and there's some chatter that this is going to be, more of a committee. Yeah, I mean, I think that's, sure, that could be a chance. Historically speaking, from a coaching standpoint, I don't see it. I talked with Matt Williamson last week on the Locked On NFL podcast, and then we had him on our show, and we asked him about this as well, and he doesn't see Jalen Samuels as a guy that can block for piss. So I don't see Jalen Samuels being able to make his way onto the field a lot. Matt Waldman doesn't see Jalen Samuels as a diverse back that can run inside and outside. If you go back and watch film of Jalen Samuels, it's a lot of like counter trays, pulling guards, stuff like that, where he gets a convoy out in front of them. He did that against the Patriots for a couple of huge runs. But other than that, he's had some issues. So, and if you break it down and go back to look at the games when James Conner down the stretch, did fade a little bit, even before the injury. It wasn't due to Jalen Samuels or another back getting work. And if it was because they were blowing somebody out. For example, whenever they blew out Carolina 52-21, Jalen Samuels got 5 carries and 3 receptions. If you look at the other games where James Conner faded, Jalen Samuels wasn't doing anything. It's just they were playing good defenses. They happened to play Jacksonville and Denver and the Chargers in a 3-week stretch before he got injured. And then in week 17, when he came back, he was just playing to help try to win that game so they could try to get in the playoffs, but he was still dealing with a high ankle sprain. And so in that game, he did split with Jalen Samuels. So as far as I'm concerned, I haven't read anything definitive. Like, I read James Conner's comments, and to me what it sounded like is, yeah, they want to try to be diverse. And he was talking about guys all getting the ball, but they didn't say anything about how much. I just don't see it happening. I still like him as a late first round, early second round pick.
All right, I like that. Here we go. What are you drinking tonight? Anything good?
Man, I'm just drinking coffee tonight.
I
know, I'm out of beer. I don't have any beer. I had band practice last night, and I drank the beer last night.
A little Saranac Summer Haze IPA. Good stuff here out of upstate New York. All right, question 2. So Dante Pettis is reportedly turning heads. I hate this coach speak garbage you get from OTAs and minicamps. But again, let's go with it. Reportedly turning heads at 49ers minicamp. Is he the wide receiver to own in San Francisco? And if so, when do you feel comfortable drafting him?
Yeah, I still think he's the wide receiver to own. I like his price right now. I'm fine with pulling the trigger on Pettis in the 7th and 8th rounds, which is typically where you have to do it. Maybe sometimes you'll be in a draft where somebody will get itchy and they'll pull the trigger on it in the 6th round. But typically I've seen him going in round 7, sometimes slipping into the 8th. There's a little bit of concern, that they're going to spread that ball around. I think George Kittle is still the number 1, but just, think back to, some of Kyle Shanahan's offenses, even his dad, Mike Shanahan. I think when I look at this offense, there's still questions with Deebo Samuel. I love him, and I love the addition to the offense. Jalen Hurd is going to be rough around the edges, so they've added him. Trent Taylor's really just a slot guy, and Marquise Goodwin is really going to be the deep threat. Now, I do like Goodwin, but lately there's been a lot of talk from Kyle Shanahan himself about scaling Goodwin back just to protect his health, so that they can keep that vertical asset in the game plan on a week-to-week basis, but maybe not a play-to-play basis. So that, to me, all of those things, make me lean towards Pettis. And it's not just, those things. It's when you look at Pettis, for receivers that ran under 40% and under from the slot, meaning they also worked outside at least 60%, he was the number 1 receiver, Drake, at creating what stat? I bet you can guess this, how much we talked about Pettis last year. It's a next-gen stat.
Is it it's separation or something?
Yes.
Yes.
Separation.
All right. I was paying attention.
The guy, you didn't just mute me the whole time. The guy.
Maybe downsize Pornhub real quick. Yeah, I'm still here.
The guy's amazing. I watched him turn around elite back. So yeah, I think he's the guy to own. I think you could have some consistency issues here and there just because there are several other mouths to feed in the offense. But this is an offense with a ton of upside. I'll actually have an article coming out tomorrow, over on at MattWaldmanRSP.com. I'm sorry, quick, unselfish. I guess selfish plug, huh, Drake? But I actually break down the 49ers, and I talk specifically about Dante Pettis and all the other weapons. But if you look at them, last year they averaged 8 yards per attempt, Drake, without even having Garoppolo. Pettis missed 4 games. Goodwin missed 4 games. This is an offense that, man, like the more and more I think about it, is it really going to surprise us if they average 8.5 yards per attempt? And I know you got your Jimmy G love already going. So I do. I think, he's definitely, that's another guy to think about late. But so for me, Pettis, yeah, I'm on board. I think the upside, is just, huge because he's always so damn open.
All right, let's go over to a guy that we probably haven't talked about in a year. Matthew Stafford. So reports came out that he was playing through a broken back last year. This is a guy who, up until last year, routinely threw for well over 4,000 yards, over 20 touchdowns every single season. Always had a really good rapport with fantasy players. Now they kind of want to run the ball a little bit more with this Matt Patricia in town, blah, 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 blah. So, Dwayne, the question to you, what is your preference on the Detroit wide receivers? And between the two, which one are you taking first? What are your expectations for basically Galladay and Marvin Jones?
Yeah. So, one, Matthew Stafford is trustworthy as far as being able to get the ball to your fantasy receivers. I thought for a second it was going to be a Matthew Stafford question itself.
Well, I'm going to preface it with he's playing with broken bones
no,
in his back.
No, it's okay. But yeah, I think, there's room for knowing that there's room for his, efficiency to go up. I mean, actually, his completion percentage was 66 last year. That's a career high. His ADOT was almost a career low at 7.1. But you've got a whole new scheme coming in there now. So now you've got Darrell Bevell. The thing that folks need to know about Darrell Bevell is in his history of coaching, lifelong coaching in the NFL as either mainly as an OC. He has, what is his top? His top is 24. He's hit 24% target share for a player one time in like 10 years. Other than that, it's never over 22. So he plays a very balanced attack. He also is going to depress the number of attempts. He's not a high tempo guy. And then thirdly, he wants to run the ball. So now you're going to have an offense that's going to run the ball more. They're going to run less plays, and he likes to distribute the ball evenly around the field. So I think, Galladay's probably fairly priced right now. He's going in the 4th round. I would like him better in the 5th round. I still think he leads the Lions in targets. I've got him at 22% of the target share right now, and I've got Marvin Jones at 19%. And the big argument you hear is, well, Golden Tate's gone. Well, Golden Tate was gone, last year. And so folks immediately think, well, once Golden Tate left, look what Galladay did. He was like, 25, 26%. Again, new coordinator, and what people are leaving out is in those same weeks down the stretch that people reference. I want to say Marvin Jones, I don't have it straight in front of me. He missed the last 6 or 7 games. And those are the games folks are referencing for Galladay when they say he's going to be a target monster. You got to go look at the games when they still had 3 quality receivers, because TJ Hawkinson and Danny Amendola, those 2 guys are going to be enough to replace Golden Tate's targets by themselves. So I just, does Galladay have a little bit of upside? Yeah, I'm not going to say that he has 0. I just think it's less than people think, because the volume's going to be depressed, by the fact that the offense runs slower and they're going to run the ball more.
Until he was traded to the Eagles, I had my wife convinced that his name was Golden Taint. And then I told her, hey, the Eagles traded for Golden Taint. She's like, what? And then she saw a game and she saw the graphic. She's like, his name's not Taint. Like, you really thought the guy's name was Golden Taint? Jeez Louise.
Hey, well, his first name's Golden. You don't hear that often.
All right, so Michael Thomas, coming off 125 receptions and 1,400 yards, is rumored to be looking for a new contract, and they want to make him the highest-paid wide receiver in the NFL, which would be something. Now, other than Michael Thomas, Dwayne, are there any other wide receivers that are viable for fantasy in New Orleans? And they did just sign Rashard Matthews, formerly of the Titans.
Well, I think New Orleans needs someone to be relevant for them to take the next step, which they were very close. But if you look down the stretch last year, teams figured out, the Cowboys, the Lions, or I can't remember if it was the Lions or not. The Lions did it to the Rams. I'm trying to think who else with Dallas did it down the stretch. But teams figured out how to, one, hold the Saints down, get them into long passing distances, and then they just subbed in a dime to cover Alvin Kamara. So essentially, instead of trying to double Alvin Kamara with like a safety and a linebacker, they said, we'll just put a dime backer on him because it's like 3rd and 8. They're likely not going to run. And then we're going to bracket Michael Thomas. And that really slowed the Saints down. So they need a 3rd guy. I think they hope that Jared Cook can do that, kind of similar to what they used to do with Darren Sproles and Jimmy Graham. And I think that's a nice combination. If I were to put, my chips on a player to be 3rd in line for targets, I think it is Jared Cook. I don't think there's a ton of upside there because 60% of the offense, 60%, get that, 60% of the passing offense ran through Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara. I honestly don't see that changing a lot, but what I do see is, someone like Cook being enough to help take some of the pressure off of them, right, and bringing some efficiency to help the passing offense overall. But I think, Jared Cook, when you look at him, I've got him slotted between, on the low end, 16% of the targets, and on the high end, I think I've got him at 19 or 20. I don't have it right in front of me. So not not terrible, but not someone, I wouldn't expect him to jump up in the 20% plus range like what Jimmy Graham used to get.
You're listening to the Fantasy Football Hustle, folks. And the man giving you all that information, that's Dwain McFarland. He's the next big thing in fantasy. You should be following him at Dwain McFarland on Twitter. If you're not, if you want to find out about nonsense, you can follow me at Drake Fantasy and follow the show at FF Hustle. We're doing an Ask Dwain Anything show, and we're up to a guy that for years I've said I've hated, but now everybody and their brother is talking about Ronald Jones. Everyone's hot to Ronald Jones now, and all of his 44 rushing yards last year. But about 5 months ago, Mr. McFarland was on Ronald Jones talking about how he could be much improved in this new Bruce Arians offense. So the question here for you, number 5, Dwain, what are your realistic expectations for Ronald Jones in this Tampa Bay offense?
Yeah, first, did you see the comment from Bruce Arians that we don't value running back? We know we don't really need to. Someone should have told him that before he paid David Johnson a boatload of money when he was still the Cardinals coach.
He's a zero RB nerd.
Yeah, exactly. But evidently he's been reading analytics Twitter. So back to your question at hand, which is Ronald Jones. For me, there's a couple things here. One, you can't give up on a player after 1 year. Drake, think back to this time last year. I'm doing drafts at all times of the year. I was drafting teams last year in June and July. Ronald Jones was going in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round.
Oh.
From fantasy experts. Why?
Sure.
Because he was a rookie running back and they thought he was very talented. And half of these people said they watched Ronald Jones's film even.
Oh, that's my favorite line. When sons of bitches say, I was watching film on this guy. Bullshit. You weren't watching anything. Would you put on a YouTube highlight tape? Nobody's breaking down all 22s here. Give me a break.
But here's the deal. Some people do. And some people I respect were doing that as well.
Some do.
And I do spend a lot of time on it, and I reference it as well. So to be fair, but I do agree. Many people are just looking at highlights. But what I will say about Ronald Jones is he looked great in college. He's a running back that is not going to break, 30 tackles. He's a running back that maybe isn't going to try to juke as much as some people want. But what he's really good at, he does have a nice first and second move. And he's got great acceleration. He knows how to take away angles from linebackers, from safeties. He did it against some pretty good competition, over the years at USC. So, and he's a guy that was taken in the early 2nd round. So, an NFL team really liked him. Does that guarantee he's going to hit? No, but it's too soon, one, to give up on the talent. Number 2, how often do you have a guy that young that people loved the talent on that much last year that could literally be staring down 250 touches easy? He could literally have 220 carries and 30 catches. How hard would that be? It's not that hard, right? Yeah, could he lose out to Peyton Barber? Yeah, but guess what? Ronald Jones costs an 8th or a 9th round pick. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be looking at many players in the 8th and 9th round at running back that have a path that is that clear, right? That literally all they have to do is beat out Peyton Barber, which I'm not trying to hate on Peyton Barber, but I feel the Bucs want Ronald Jones to win. He just needs to go win the job. So some guys would say, no, I would rather take Jalen Samuels there. Well, you're depending on James Conner to get hurt. Ronald Jones is at least in an open competition to lead the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in rushing attempts this year. Jalen Samuels needs James Conner to be hurt. You could argue Miles Sanders needs, to get healthy, and then he's going to probably have to beat out Jordan Howard now. And I've taken Miles Sanders in the 6th round of a draft. So I think when you start just logically thinking through the other runners going in that range, I've seen Deonta Foreman going in the 9th round. He still has to beat out Lamar Miller, who is the incumbent, for sure incumbent, who is, not great, but he's still decent. Ronald Jones, I feel like, is the guy with the best chance to go win his job. He still has, a lot of upside. He was a 2nd round pick last year. So to me, in the 8th and 9th round, man, why not? Why not take a swing? It's not like he cost you a 5th.
Bonus question. 7th round comes to Dwain in a draft. On the clock, you need a running back. Let's just say you need a running back, all right? LaShawn McCoy and Ronald Jones are on the board. Who are you taking?
Don't even ask me that. That's dumb. I'm taking Ronald Jones all day.
Uh,
And I've loved LaShawn McCoy over his career, but you got Frank Gore, who's gonna get his touches. He's gonna get them. Frank Gore always gets his touches. We know this, right? So Gore's gonna get his touches. Josh Allen's gonna snipe rushing touchdowns. And they signed T.J. Yeldon, and then they draft a pretty good rookie in Singletary. So, man, that's a lot of mouths to feed. And by the way, the Bills are probably not going to win more than 6 games. They do get to play, in a division that's not really that great except for the Patriots. But I expect the Jets to be better than the Bills this year, to be honest. Now, they'll get to beat up on the Dolphins, who basically just, fire sell. So you can count on those 2 games. But for me, an offense is not going to score a ton of touchdowns. A quarterback's going to steal your touchdowns, and you're in the running back committee of all committees. Screw LaShawn McCoy. Everybody say it with me. Screw LaShawn McCoy.
I wish you could see.
Forget about it, Drake.
The framed LaShawn McCoy jersey I have next to my podcast center here, but that was from 2013 when he was a young, spry Philadelphia Eagle under Chip Kelly.
Yeah, spoiler alert. It's like LaShawn McCoy does on Twitter. He spoils, freaking, the Avengers, the last Avengers movie. It came on and spoiled let's give a spoiler on LaShawn McCoy. Dude, you're going to suck in fantasy football this year.
Did you see that video of Cuba Gooding Jr. the other day? He got arrested, allegedly groped some woman at a party or something.
I just read the headline. I didn't.
All right, so I saw it on the news, and they go to a video of him at a party, right? And he's obviously hammered, and he's like on the mic. Guess who's standing next to him drinking at the party?
LaShawn McCoy.
LaShawn McCoy. I had my wife rewind. I go, holy shit, that's LaShawn McCoy. Rewind that. And he rewind it, and there's Shady right next to him. I'm like, oh my God, this guy, if trouble follows him right.
Yeah.
LaShawn McCoy and OJ are probably working together on that Twitter feed.
I mean, in all due respect, Shady is a guy, like you said, I've loved for so long. It's just a bad situation. It's nothing against him. It doesn't get much worse.
Hopefully he gets traded. That'd be great.
That's your upside. That's what you're hoping for.
Absolutely.
But that's not likely, so don't spend a high pick on it.
According to Play FFWC ADP, Saquon Barkley is the number 1 overall pick in fantasy drafts. So the question to you, Dwayne, if you had the first overall pick in a PPR draft, who are you taking and why?
So there's a couple quick things on this. One, in full transparency, I draft a ton of teams. So if I'm drafting 1 overall, I do take Saquon because he, like 50 to 60% of the time, is the first pick. So if I want to own shares of Saquon, I have to take him with the number 1 pick. Now, if I was a fantasy football player that only was in 1 league, I feel like most people are in 2 now, or many people are. So if I was only going to be in 1 or 2 leagues, I do think that there's a strong argument to be made that the safest player is Alvin Kamara, and that's because he lives within the safety of Sean Payton's offense.
I thought you were going to say Ezekiel Elliott.
Well, hang on. You're right. I would have until we have this whole thing with the security guard with Zeke. So he's got a past history, and we know the commissioner likes to, even though he hasn't as much lately, he likes to crack down on these things. There's some chance that Zeke gets some sort of suspension from the league. Otherwise, Zeke would be my number 1. But if he, with that looming over, it's just enough to swing it to Kamara. Here's my concern with Barkley if I'm going to be nitpicky. What he did last year, over 50% of his yards came on big plays. That's not sustainable. Now, what I do look for about running backs is what is the percentage of big carries they break per attempt, but not yards. So Saquon's an elite back. He's going to break 8 to 10% of his plays past 15 yards. But if this year some of those come from the opponent's 30 instead of from his own 30 and some of these other things, he could easily take a 20% hit in yards. Easy. He could easily have that happen to him and be just as good as he was last year, but people would think he was worse. The second thing is, man, I'm scared to death of Daniel Jones being the starter. I mean, Eli Manning isn't great by himself, but at least he's a veteran. Man, if Daniel Jones takes over, I just think, it's one of those situations where it's going to be like Josh Rosen last year. It's just going to be ugly. And so that scares me with Saquon, So typically, the deal that I preach, around, I think Vegas has them at 6 wins. Teams, between 6 and 4 wins, they score about 30% less in in rushing touchdowns than the teams that play, that win, that play from ahead. Because once you get down, you're in the fourth quarter, you're down by 2 touchdowns, you're at the 15, and teams don't want to stop the clock, and they want to, and they just keep throwing the ball. You just don't get the rushing touchdowns. So those are things if you wanted to nitpick Saquon Barkley. But to answer it, I'm still taking him there. Zeke's got that one question. The one question with CMC, McCaffrey may be answered right here by the time training camp gets here and we get to see a few preseason games, which is you just have the lingering question over Cam Newton's shoulder, right? If his shoulder ends up being an issue again, that could put the Panthers in a situation where they're not playing as good a football. They could be trailing more often, all those sorts of things. Now, he's insulated with his catches, but the explosiveness of the offense could go down. Now, if Cam Newton does end up being fully healthy, I put Kamara and Christian McCaffrey. I would put Christian McCaffrey at 1 and Kamara at 2. In PPR and half-point PPR. If you're just doing standard league, I may still lean back to Barkley and Zeke.
We always preach you want running backs who catch passes, get high volume, and are on good teams. And Saquon Barkley just spits in the face of that because his team sucks balls. And yet, without question, people just say, yeah, take him number 1. Take him,
but he spits in the face, of one thing, which is he's got a quarterback issue. But he's really good in the other 2. He does get the pass catching, right? And he's an elite runner getting all the carries. So he gets 2 of 3.
Right.
Zeke,
and I'm not saying he doesn't.
Zeke would be 3 of 3 if he didn't have, the one other question. So,
I want people to take that away as they start preparing for their drafts and they're looking at these running backs. And like we just mentioned a guy like Ronald Jones. Now, I don't expect Tampa Bay to be that great of a football team, but you're also only investing, like we said, a 7th, 8th, 9th round pick into that running back that you hope pops. When you're looking at a 1st or 2nd round running back, especially in the 2nd round, Dwayne, I'm sure you've got data up the wazoo to back this up, but I don't want a running back on a crappy team in the 2nd round, especially if you go wide receiver in the 1st round. Now you're just setting yourself up for failure. If you say, okay, well, I'm going to take Hopkins in the 1st round, and this is going to lead into my next question, Dwayne. If you take Hopkins in the 1st round at 5 overall, right? You have the 5th pick, you take Hopkins. Does the running back coming back to you in the 2nd round scare you off from maybe making that pick of Hopkins in the 1st round? Or are you going to say, screw it, Hopkins is that good, I don't care, we'll see who comes back to me, and I might even go receiver if that's the case?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of ways to approach the pick. One, how how much I love Juju Smith-Schuster. So if you're in any draft besides the ones where I'm drafting, Juju usually comes back to you in the mid-2nd. All the ones I've done when I'm trying to do that, he never makes it. He'll go at the turn or something dumb. So I'm kind of pissed off about that right now. But anyway, it'll eventually work itself out. There's a couple ways to go at it. One is if you really want to be safe and take the runner, and then you come back and I believe in Juju, you're getting a receiver that this year, based on having an elite quarterback that's going to be locked onto him, a team that's going to pass the ball between 60 and 65% of plays, a team that ran more plays than anybody else in the league last year. We're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Juju is got as good of a floor as anybody. Because last year he had 160 targets. I've only got him at that this year, but would it surprise anybody if Juju had one of those 200 target seasons? Not really. It could happen just because of the way that offense works. So if you want to go runner and then come back and get Smith-Schuster and know that you've got an elite at both positions, you can. I typically get more aggressive, and it's because I like the floor of DeAndre Hopkins and Devontae Adams, so much in a PPR format that I'm likely taking them right there in that mid pick and still trying to come back and land Smith-Schuster. Now, that strategy has a bigger likelihood of backfiring if you're really trying to, if you want true floor at both picks, because when you think about it, there's a good chance if Smith-Schuster goes, you're going to be facing the running back. And then you're looking at Dalvin Cook, which I love, but we know people are scared by his injury concerns, and Alexander Madison's still going to have a role. You're looking at someone like Damian Williams, which, look, great offense, but he's It's very questionable that he's going to get the full load. I don't think that he's going to. Reed has typically done that in the past. You know me, I'm like the coaching freaking fanatic. I preach coaching tendencies, et cetera, but there is a precedent to Reed using more than one back whenever they are truly complementary and not an all-round kind of guy like a Jamal Charles or a Brian Westbrook or even a Kareem Hunt. So once you get to those kind of guys, you could make I wouldn't blame someone, Drake, if they're drafting one or two teams and their goal in the first two rounds was just not to beat themselves. If they wanted to go ahead and take a runner like David Johnson or Melvin Gordon or, one of these other guys that goes there and then come back and try to get, Juju Smith-Schuster, I get it. Personally, I'm going to swing receiver if I can.
All right. This is the Fantasy Football Hustle. We're going through an Ask Dwain Anything episode right now. We're pulling some questions from the Twitter universe. And next up, we're going to go... Let me look through my list here. All right, I like this one right here. Who scores more touchdowns, Hunter Henry or Mike Williams? And which player are you more likely to have greater shares of? Now, reminder, everybody, Mike Williams scored 10 touchdowns last year.
Right. Well, one, I've got Mike Williams projected for a regression in touchdowns, obviously, because if you look at how many catches he had versus touchdowns, that's just a really high ratio. You don't typically see keep itself up. Number two, Hunter Henry is actually a really good red zone option. So when Hunter Henry went down last year, that actually helped Mike Williams in that area of his game. So right now I have got Mike Williams at 25% share of the touchdowns for the Chargers, which is right at 7.5. And I've got Hunter Henry at 20%, which puts him at a 6. So I think they kind of cancel each other out. This is an offense that's very balanced and very versatile. They can attack any team based on where the best matchup is, and Phillip Rivers will do exactly that. The one guy that's insulated that pretty much always gets his in this offense is Keenan Allen. But even Keenan Allen, the upside of a 27-28% target share, it's gone. He can't get it anymore. He's more same like T.Y. Hilton, in Indianapolis. Their ranges are more likely to be 22 to 24 to 25% now. So to come back and answer the question, I'm more likely to own Hunter Henry than I am to be owning Mike Williams just because he's a little bit cheaper. I do still like Mike Williams. I don't think his ADP is terrible. If you look at his fantasy points scored versus the ADP you would want for a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 in previous years and what those guys score, his overall points are pretty close to what they need to be to take him in that round. But you're looking at a player that I think is going to be a bit up and down. And there are just some guys that I'm targeting in that area that I feel a little bit better around. Or for me, there's a ton of guys in round 8 and 9 that I like just as much as Mike Williams. That's really the problem with Mike Williams. It's not him. And it's not really the points he's projected at. I just see guys that I can get in the 8th and 9th round that I think can have just as good of a stat line as he can. Because I've got Mike Williams at 16% of the targets and a good offense. I said 25% of the touchdowns. So that's 50 catches, 800 yards, and 7 touchdowns. I've got a list of 5 or 6 guys that I think easily can be at that or better. That go in later rounds.
Just because we talked about Keenan Allen, I'm looking at his stats here. Man, he had quite a lull. He went 7 games early in the season without a touchdown after week 1. And then he came back at the end of the season and had 4 weeks out of the last 5 without a touchdown.
Yeah, and he's not a he's never been a huge touchdown guy because he's more of a, separate quickly, catch it, and do some rack stuff. He's a great route runner. I mean, really, really good. He creates elite separation. And they move him around, they get him in the slot, but he's not a guy that gets a ton, of really good looks when they get down to the red zone because Phillip Rivers is one of those guys that likes to throw it up to the big guys when he gets down there. Some quarterbacks don't. Some quarterbacks are still looking for the quick separation, and those guys, a guy like Keenan Allen can still thrive in that kind of offense. But Phillip Rivers, just the way he likes to work it for whatever reason, once they get down there, he likes to give the old loft up pass, to Mike Williams, Hunter Henry. Remember Antonio Gates catching all those so often. Yeah, you're right. That's something that can happen with Keenan Allen. You're going to be depending on the catches and the yards much more so than the touchdowns, which I've got him projected at 6.
Here's a great question from a young lady who just started following our show. Dwain, why are you such a douche? Why do you love James White so much? Rex Burkhead is the man. I don't know where this is going, Dwayne, but if you want to talk about the Patriots offense and how you think James White's going to figure. I was in a draft with you for Fighting Chance, and you took him as your RB2.
Yeah, and I like taking him as my RB2 and then coming back and swinging for upside on another running back later, like a Miles Sanders or a Ronald Jones. And it just depends on the way, that a draft is going. You need – I wrote about this at Fighting Chance. It's about planning 4, 5, 6, 7 steps ahead of your opponents in these drafts, not just round to round. And so seeing the way a draft plays out within the first 2 to 3 rounds, my strategy typically is going to kick in. I know basically how the draft is going to go and what direction I need to take for the rest of the draft. And in that particular draft, you had to start 3 wide receivers. So I wanted to have 3 elite wide receivers, especially the way the board fell to me and the way runners went. So I like James White because, one, I think he could easily be the number 2 target on this team. Tom Brady throws to guys he trusts. He's done it for forever. Wes Welker, Danny Amendola, Julian Edelman, Rob Gronkowski. How many receivers have we seen roll through the Patriots that people are all excited about? And then Brady doesn't give them all the love, right? Brandon Cooks never did. Yes, he did with Randy Moss. But when I think about James White, this is a guy that they love. Now, I don't think James White is going to get a ton more snaps. The Patriots use 3 backs. That's the way they do it. James White usually gets about 40%. The Sony Michel or you can go back to Stephen Ridley, LeGarrette Blount. That guy gets about 40% of the carries. And then you have another guy that gets, 15, not 40% of the carries, but 40% of the snaps. And then you usually have another guy, a la Rex Burkhead, that gets 15 to 20%. The bad thing for James White this year is if Rex Burkhead goes down, Damian Williams easily steps in and takes that role over. If Sony Michel goes down, Damian Williams or Rex Burkhead can easily take over that number 2 role. So the argument against James White on Twitter is that, last year is an anomaly, and I actually agree because he did get some extra rushing work and touchdowns from when they were depleted for about a 5-game stretch in the middle of the season. But I think what people are still missing is even at 40% of the snaps, what really matters is another stat that I talked about all the time last year, Drake, and it is, routes ran per drop back. When the quarterback's dropping back to pass, who's out in the route? James White carries elite numbers in that area, even though he's only getting 40% of the snaps. So what I care about is James White's on the field a lot when the Patriots are passing the ball. And I could easily see him in those snaps being the number 2 target on the whole team. I think Julian Edelman is the clear number 1, should easily be going in the 3rd and 4th rounds of PPR drafts. James White is easily going to be the number 2 with Gronkowski gone. And the other thing people forget, I know I'm going along on this one, but it's a really good question. Danny Amendola left the year before. So who replaced those routes? Because Julian Edelman is really the flanker, and he will move inside to be the slot. But they didn't have a true slot receiver last year. It just didn't work out for them. So who took over a lot of that? It was James White. James White was running those routes in that 3 to 5 yard range instead of Amendola, instead of Welker, the guys that have typically operated there. So for me, James White is just a guy that, even if he only gets 15% of the carries, and I've got him at 17% target share. He had been at 14% before last year. Last year he was at 20%. So I've still got him between those two. In a PPR league, those numbers still get you, right to 190 to 210 points, which I think is pretty safe for James White.
Yes, make some friends on Twitter, Dwayne. Jeez Louise, come on. So I'm looking right now at a player's touchdowns over the past 2 years, and running and passing combined, he's had 28 touchdowns each the last 2 seasons. Rushing yards are almost 500, over 700 the year before that. And I'm sure you can figure out I'm talking about Cam Newton.
Mm-hmm.
If Cam is healthy and he is able to throw the football and there's no limitations, number one, do you think the rushing bounces back or at least stays consistent where he's going to rush for at least over 400, 500 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns? And number two, is he a value on draft day? Is this someone you're looking to target because people are going to be so down on him from where they used to be?
Well, I've drafted 3 teams so far. 2 of them are mid-stakes, drafts. So these are actual drafts, not including like mocks where I've drafted him. I've drafted Cam Newton 2 out of 3 times. Mm-hmm. So he's going in the 12th round of some of these mid-stake drafts, which is insane because if he's healthy, he's a top 5 quarterback. And, the pushback I get, why take the risk? What's the risk? It's a 12th round pick. Tom Brady's going freaking undrafted in half these drafts. Mm-hmm. If Cam Newton doesn't work out, I'm not even drafting a backup on my draft, assuming your waiver wires run before the league season starts. You can't do that if that's not the case. I'm not even drafting a backup quarterback because, I can easily still go pick up Tom Brady, Marcus Mariota, who's going to have way better targets this year. There's lots of things I can scrape together at quarterback, even if I miss on Cam Newton. But if I hit, I have a top 5 quarterback, maybe a top 3 quarterback. This is an offense that is ascending. Norv Turner is someone that a year ago I thought, man, why did they bring Norv Turner in? Old crotchety Norv. Look, I love Norv's history. I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. I'm born and raised here, so he was great to the Cowboys as an offensive coordinator. But the league had outgrown him. Guess what the guy did? To his credit, he took a year off. He went and really studied the college game, studied ways to use some of these space players like DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel. This is an offense that's the arrow is up. Curtis Samuel freaking played great last year. DJ Moore for a rookie, on intermediate and short passes was insane. He led the league for players. I think it was at least 50 catches. He led the league for players with at least 50 catches that were targeted with an ADOT of 10 or under and rack yarded and yards after the catch. The guy's ridiculous at making stuff happen after the play. And then Curtis Samuel is a big play threat. He can also do some of the same things as DJ Moore. This could be Cam Newton's best, one of his best statistical years ever, if he's healthy.
I love that. He's a guy that you can get, like you said, way late. If you're getting in the 12th,
he's why you don't draft quarterbacks. He's why you don't draft a quarterback in the 5th and 6th round. Just don't do it.
You can get Cam as your backup.
Don't. You're giving away an edge if you're doing that. Don't do it.
I'm just saying you could get him as your backup. Like imagine if you waited 11th, 12th round and you go back to back. You go, I'm going to take Garoppolo, and then you come back around and you go, and I'm going to take Cam Newton.
Yeah, just do it in the other order.
Yeah, whatever it goes. You can get those 2 guys.
That's fine. You don't even have to do that though. Just take one if your waiver wire still run before the season. You get risky.
I've never been
risky.
I've never been a backup quarterback guy, even throughout the season. And last year in the biggest league that I care about, my quarterback situation was terrible. We talked about it here on the show. I ended up trading for Jameis Winston and Fitzmagic and all this stuff. And it worked out fine. I ended up with Deshaun Watson after another couple of trades. But the waiver wire can be your backup quarterback. I firmly believe you're wasting a roster spot in 10 or 12 team leagues rostering a backup quarterback. There's no point to it.
If Cam Newton plays this, if he's healthy, and if Tyreek Hill doesn't play for the Chiefs, which, there's a chance, I've got Cam Newton literally 20 points behind Pat Mahomes. What's the point? Mm-hmm. Now, let's say Pat Mahomes does get Tyreek Hill. It does make a significant difference because of the way their offense works. I've got him with 5 more touchdowns. Based on that, his touchdowns per attempt would go up and his yards per attempt would go up, from 8.25 to 8.5. So in that case, Pat Mahomes, I've got right at 370, which would be, about a 40-point advantage. But if you divide 40 points out over the course of your, regular season in fantasy, 12 games, if you're not good at math, just divide by 10 and go from there. It's not a huge difference versus what you could be throwing picks at receiver and tight end. Volume is key. Throw as many darts as you can because those are the positions where you could land a player in that round. In the 4th, 5th, 6th round, you could be landing a player that's going to score 100 points more, 100 points more than what your opponent is getting later.
A guy I love with the just butt naked last pick of the draft, right? And he's old and he's hurt and he hasn't done shit for 2 seasons, but it's Greg Olsen. Because, God, if he's healthy, he's going to get targets. And you can just take him with the last pick of your draft as your tight end 2. If he hits and he stays healthy, you're cooking with gas. There's nothing sexy about it. There's no, young, flashy upside to it, but he is Cam's boy. Am I crazy here, Dwayne?
No, I don't think that's crazy. His role was reduced last year, but we don't know how much of that was due to injury because, he hurt his foot like right out of the gate. I want to say week 1, and then he kind of had to make his way back. And then we don't know how healthy he was, and it got re-hurt, and he was like questionable all the time. So don't know how much of that was just due to the injury. Now that is 2 years in a row that he's fought an injury like that. So it's kind of scary. But to your point, with the last pick of the draft, say you took an upside quarterback, say you waited on tight end and you decided to go upside, in like round 10 on a tight end I like a guy like Greg Olsen. Hell, I like a guy like Jimmy Graham in the last round if that's your strategy. Jimmy Graham's a guy that, the coaching staff is talking about him being one of the first or second reads a lot more in the Packers offense because of the way they're going to use motion and different things. Now, that's if Aaron Rodgers can get over himself and doesn't think that he needs free range to change every damn thing at the line of scrimmage all the time. He and his coach are going to have to come to some sort of, agreement around that. I think it's funny that Rodgers sits there and says, well, I've had this privilege my whole life. And I'm like, well, okay, yeah, but look at the results the last 2 to 3 years, Aaron. It ain't so freaking great, buddy. You might want to lean on your coach a little bit more. I'm not saying you're not elite, but know your role, bro. Know your role.
There's reports coming out let's just switch to Aaron Rodgers and the Packers here quickly, that this Matt LaFleur offense is taking stuff from Kubiak offense, I believe, right from 10 years ago. So are we to believe that Arian Foster is Aaron Jones? I think that Aaron Jones, he's going to have a great season. Yeah. And I might be the only guy in fantasy that thinks Aaron Rodgers is underrated this year. Usually he's a QB1 off the board, and now with Mahomes and Wilson and Watson and all these guys, I think you can kind of get Aaron Rodgers at a value if he falls late enough, and I think he's still going to put up 35-plus touchdowns for you. If you're in a QB premium league.
I think he can. I mean, Matt LaFleur's coaching tree is Gary Kubiak, Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan, and Sean McVay are all the key people he's worked with. So, and McVay, he worked through Jay Gruden and through Kyle Shanahan. So, these guys are all from a very close tree. So I expect to see him running a lot of the same concepts that you've seen from Kyle Shanahan as well as McVay, which is a really good scheme, which is kind of, part of my, thought process around Aaron Rodgers. I love the guy, but, let this coach come in and install his scheme. Don't already start undermining him. I do agree that, Aaron Rodgers has the upside to hit the 30, 35 touchdowns. My biggest concern with him is there's not enough explosive playmakers. Now Aaron Jones is one of them. But really it's Devontae Adams, Valdez-Scantling. We like him, but is he really explosive? Geronimo Allison, I like him, but he's more of a role player. Jimmy Graham is older. Nobody on this offense is a guy that I'm like, wow, they can really take the top off of the defense. Wow, they really scare a defense. It's like, okay, Devontae Adams is going to move all the formation overall, all over the formation. He's going to do his thing. And then they're going to use a lot more running and play action to help create some mismatches, but is there anyone? They don't have a Dante Pettis.
They need a shot
second guy.
Yeah, they needed. They
don't have a Marquise Goodwin. They don't have that. So that's the knock on Rodgers. His playing ability is still elite, but Aaron Rodgers is one of those guys that if you just didn't know who he was and you were just watching him last year, no offense, but you would have probably thought, man, this guy's not that great. And I mean, part of that is, the narrative is that he gave up. He was basically undermining McCoy, and maybe all that's true.
Yeah, he was hurt the whole season too.
Yeah, he was, but it also, I watched a lot of his stuff. It looked like, someone that, I don't know. I thought it was a guy that definitely wasn't maximizing, all the features of an offense. He looked to be kind of trying to do his own thing. So I'm hoping that, he and LaFleur can come to, because LaFleur does come from a scheme that is amazing. And no offense to Aaron Rodgers, he's been in a scheme that hadn't been that great for the last 5 years. So I'm hoping I think they can both add something to the equation. And so if they can figure out how to work that out between each other and meet in the middle, I still love Aaron Rodgers. But like I said, I am a little bit scared about the elite players. To your question on Aaron Jones, man, the upside on Aaron Jones is huge. The only question I have on Aaron Jones is we still don't know for sure that he's just the guy. No one has said it.
I heard a Packers beat reporter on another show talking, and he made it seem like he's like, no, he's the guy. This Jamal Williams nonsense is over with. It's Aaron Jones.
I think I read the same article, but I didn't read anything in his article that he referenced based on things happening in practice and the way that the depth chart was working out, that he was the guy. It sounded more like he looks really good in practice, and I could be wrong, but the way the article sounded to me was it looks really good in practice, and I'm projecting that he's going to be the guy. And here's the thing, with Aaron Jones last year, the old coaching staff did not trust him in the passing game. He did not play on passing downs near as much. He led the way on running downs, but he gave way to Jamal Williams and to Ty Montgomery and other backs on passing downs. That tells me that staff didn't trust him to protect Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers likes to hold the ball. Now, if Aaron Rodgers will listen to LaFleur and implement some of the scheme, which a lot of it can be running back sneaking out the backside of a bootleg fake and you getting it back to them on the other side, if you're not just always looking downfield for the big play and you're willing to hit a quick guy underneath, maybe that helps Aaron Jones because he's blocking less and he's out in the routes more as a receiver because he can do that.
All right, one more question before I hit you with the quick hitters to close the show here. If Leonard Fournette catches 40 to 50 balls, is he a top 5 running back this year?
No. I mean, I've got him projected to catch that. I think I got to look real quick. I've got him projected at 47 catches. He's not a bad receiver, like people think. Now he's not the best receiver, but he's one of those guys that if you can just get the ball out to him as your third or fourth read, he's a problem for a cornerback to handle in the open field. Whenever he's trying to come down on him catching a pass in the flat. I think the bigger issue for Fournette, is just staying healthy. And I think if he's fully healthy all season, you could see him approach 55 to 60 catches, and you could see him approach 285 as far as carries go, and he's got upside, to get 8 to 10 touchdowns. So I think the bigger thing is still his health. I've got him playing, I've got him basically missing 2 games and still getting, around 45 catches.
Leonard Fournette's one of those guys who's going to benefit greatly from Nick Foles being in Jacksonville, finally having a competent quarterback who can deliver the football, with poise, with accuracy. And Leonard Fournette in fantasy is one of those guys who's going to go second round, early third, who say you took that receiver, DeAndre Hopkins, at 5. Imagine Leonard Fournette's the running back you take, and he hits. Or you get him in the 3rd round. Now, that's how teams win fantasy leagues, really, because you just get this guy that hits that everybody was down on, and you go, holy crap, remember when this guy was like a top 5 pick a year ago, and now I just got him in the 3rd round?
Yeah. No, you're right. That's how people win leagues. The problem you have is he's going in the 3rd round. Mid 3rd is about where he goes. I see him sometimes slide to the 4th. He's in the same range as Aaron Jones, Josh Jacobs, Kerryon Johnson, Derrick Henry. Philip Lindsay's been sliding a little bit because he's still not quite healthy. But, he's going right in a range where there's, I like Kerryon Johnson. I like Aaron Jones. Those are some guys where I wrestle with, which do I like more? I like those other players a lot. What I will say for Leonard Fournette, all he has to do is 2 things. If he's healthy, the role is his. Number 2, just don't be an idiot, right? Don't pull your helmet off and hit and go try to hit someone with it and just stupid stuff. If he doesn't do those 2, if he's healthy, in which, hey, how many times, Drake, have we seen, people write off someone just because, oh, he's hurt all the time, and all of a sudden, until the season, he's not. It happens. So if Leonard Fournette's healthy the whole year, you can bank on it. He's going to get, with no TJ Yeldon, his upside on catches, I have up to like 65 or 70. That can happen.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, he's a guy that could get, he could get the carries and catches that people are still hoping Todd Gurley's going to get. So will it be in as good of an offense? No. They also need someone to step up and take the top off of defenses. They drafted DJ Chark to do that. They brought in Chris Conley this offseason. Didn't work out with Moncrief last year. So they need somebody to come in and help loosen things up. So that's the other thing, Fournette. If he got some of that. The thing where I'm hard on Fournette is his efficiency. I only have him at 4 yards per carry, which the league average last year was 4.5. It was an all-time high. But I have him low because, his yards per carry have been, down, right around 4 or below the last 2 years because it's a predictable team. So not only does Nick Foles need the help, but they need the play calling to get better.
All right, we're going to give you quick hitters here. It's 5 questions. You can only give me one-word answers. Are you ready?
All right.
It's going to be an either or. So I'm going to give you 2 options. All right, ready? Tom Landry or Jimmy Johnson?
Jimmy Johnson.
Beer or whiskey?
Beer.
Guitar or drums?
Guitar.
Dez or Michael Irvin?
Michael Irvin.
UT or A&M?
A&M.
All right, there we go. That's it, folks. That's how you do it. Ask Dwain Anything episode right there. This is the first show, Dwain, we've ever kept under an hour. But there's a reason for that, folks, and that's because if you're listening, you're going to get a special bonus episode of the Fantasy Football Hustle where we talk to the one and only Sigmund Bloom of Football Guys. How excited are you for that to come down tomorrow?
Oh, man, I'm so excited. Having a guy like, Sig on, with his knowledge and, he just talks to so many other people, in the industry. He's always – that's what I love about him. He's always, really, prying into, peeling back the layers of why, certain analysts have guys ranked a certain way. And he's really good at assimilating all that information, together and then using that and plus his own research to inform, his opinion around players. He's just a guy that I don't know that anybody else, in the industry has as good of a pulse just overall, right, on what, some of the elite projectors around the league, are thinking and, what NFL offenses are going to be doing this fall.
So that's going to be fun. We'll hit that tomorrow. And thank you to everybody out there who started to follow Dwain and myself on Twitter. Follow him at Dwain McFarland, DWAIN. Follow me at Drake Fantasy. And, of course, follow the show at FF Hustle. So we're going to see you later this week with our special episode with Mr. Sigmund Bloom. And until then, folks, remember, never stop hustling. We'll see you guys. Take care.
This has been the Fantasy Football Hustle. We're back next week with all you need for waiver wire, trades, roster management, and more. Until then, never get out hustled.